Liverpool have now lost 3 games on the bounce, falling 2-1 to Chelsea yesterday. Once again, a late goal was a drama in a Liverpool match, but for the second Premier League match in a row, it's Liverpool who suffered due to the late winner, with our opponents snatching the win at the death from us. At Crystal Palace, it was very much deserved, in my opinion. We should have been 4-0 down by half-time at Palace. Chelsea, it was a lot more of an even battle. However, we never looked in control of the match at any point, and it always looked like it could go either way. It was end-to-end for large stretches of the match. We're going to talk about why we lost to Chelsea. I'm Lawrence on Liverpool, a tiny Liverpool fan channel. You got me to 1,000 subscribers super fast. Let's see if we can get to 2,000 before the end of the year. Help me get there. Going into the Chelsea game, I got my lineup predictions completely correct. Give me a thumbs up, give me a like for that at least. And that was about the only thing I felt good about in this match, to be honest. So many things went wrong. For a neutral, it was probably quite a fun match to watch. It was pretty end-to-end, even though there was only 3 goals. For a Liverpool fan, it was frustrating. And I'm going to list out several of the reasons why it was frustrating and how they had an impact on our match, our performance, and the result in the end. I'm going to start off with something I've been complaining about since the beginning of the season, since pre-season really, how passive we are being in defence. We are sitting back, watching. There's a lot of ball watching. And there's not much going to our man and really pressing them in our half of the field. We're just kind of letting opponents run the ball around and do what they want to do and hope we can get in last-ditch tackles or that they will run out of ideas. And this happened with Chelsea's first goal, where Van Dijk and Konate both backed away rather than either one of them deciding to fix the situation. The situation was created by McAllister lunging in at Caicedo, missing the ball entirely. Caicedo now seeing he's got acres of space in front of him, he can wind up his shot and unleash it as a rocket into the top left corner. Mamardashvili had no chance of saving that, but there was time for either Van Dijk or Konate to push out and deal with the problem, shut Caicedo down. They were too worried about him passing off to someone else, and they just backed away and gave him the shooting opportunity. More than gave him, begged him to take a shot. It was like, here you go, my friend, here you go. Have a crack at our new goalkeeper in only his first Premier League start. Now, Mamardashvili was good. He was good. He was pretty solid. And he could have done nothing about either the 2 goals, and I'm not even going to hold this until the end. He's my man of the match. It's a shame when the last 2 Premier League games, it was Alisson and Mamardashvili. Your goalkeeper is your man of the match. That says a lot about the collective team performance. Anyway, back into our problems with defence, just too passive. Van Dijk has always been quite a calm leader, right? He's very different from Jordan Henderson before him. I prefer the Jordan Henderson type of leader in a team. Someone who is incredibly vocal, very loud, very in your face, rallying the troops. You're going to war, right? When a football match is being played, there's an element of a battle, of a war taking place. And you want your general to be an absolute fighter. That's what Hendo was. Van Dijk. Now, I've seen a lot of people online saying, Van Dijk's just become a bit of a finger pointer. He points around, blames a lot of people, and just stays in his spot and says, I'll kind of marshal this one little area, and something goes wrong elsewhere, that's their fault. I think that's a bit harsh. I think Van Dijk is a bit more than that, but he is quite a backseat leader, to be fair. And I wish he was a bit more proactive, a bit more forceful. Hendo would force his teammates to react to situations. If you went 1-0 up, Hendo will be barking orders at you to not let the opposition back into their game. If you went 1-0 down, Hendo will be screaming to get players to fight harder to push themselves back into their game. You don't get that with Van Dijk. What you did get for many years was an absolute Rolls Royce of a defender, one of the best defenders we've ever seen in the Premier League. Yesterday, though, Pedro Neto, who's not actually that fast, took on Van Dijk and beat him. He beat him for pace and he went round the massive Dutchman. That used to never happen with Van Dijk. So now Van Dijk's lost a yard of pace. He's not as fast as he used to be. And we don't have the control we had pretty much for all of last season. Yet we didn't win games by massive amounts, but we never looked in that much threat. This season, we're looking under a lot of threat. And even all the games we've won, we could have lost those. And Van Dijk has not taken the bull by the horns and really rallied the troop. I'd like to see a bit more of that. He needs to lead by example and not be so passive. But it's not just Van Dijk. Konate once again misplaced several passes. At one point, Konate couldn't even find Van Dijk a few meters to his left. Lapses in concentration are just so evident, and he was hooked on the 55th minute. But Joe Gomez wasn't brought on. Gravenberch was pushed back with Curtis Jones put into midfield. It kind of worked out all right because Curtis Jones was decent when he came on, and Gravenberch didn't look too out of place as a central defensive pairing with Van Dijk. You could say that for Chelsea's winning goal at the end, Cucurella's pushed to the byline and cut back. Maybe Konate, his bigger physical presence, his more experience in chopping down cutbacks would have helped there. Who knows? Let's move on from another performance of Konate of missing passes and lacking concentration to talk about the overall team problem of our passing and movement and a complete lack of cohesion in understanding where players are moving to, that sense of telepathy, that building up awareness of each other and what each other wants to do in an attacking sense is massively missing from the team at the moment. I know we've scored our fair share of goals. They're often coming through because of a moment of magic or fortune. Our goal for Gakpo, a good cross. Isak brings the ball down. He's really trying to control it for himself to spin and volley, but doesn't quite get the touch he wants. The ball rolls away. Gakpo's right there to slam it in. Good awareness, good anticipation from Gakpo in an otherwise fairly poor performance from Gakpo, and he's had a few poor performances in a row. At least he got the goal for us, but it wasn't a result of free-flowing attacking football, was it? It wasn't a result of what you're trying on a training pitch working in a game or of building a deep understanding with your teammates. It's all very fragmented, our attack at the moment. Now, when you bring in Isak, Wirtz, Kerkez on the left, Frimpong when he plays on the right, you're going to get a real shake-up to the team. And we also have to talk about the fact that we lost Jota and they've lost a friend. So they're still grieving, really. And that would have shaken up their whole pre-season. You have to factor that in a little bit. It's not an excuse, but you do have to factor it in a little bit just to have a bit of empathy for the players. And then you have players like Bradley and McAllister who didn't get a full pre-season in terms of fitness. They still look off it. McAllister, his mistake leading to Caicedo's open shot, which led to the first goal. Some of his passing was awry. McAllister didn't have the best game either. But overall, the general passing and movement is still poor. One silver lining is that Salah, who been marginalised for several games in a row now, hardly finding him, not being able to get involved and influence the game at all, was found quite a lot by players, actually. I think there was a real instruction. Let's get the ball to Mo Salah a bit more. He was drifting in more. He was getting more involved. The problem was he had an absolute stinker of a game. Every shot was way over the bar. Most crosses and passes missed their man entirely. There was an absolute peach, though, of a left-footed cross from the outside of the foot fairly early on to Isak's head. Isak headed over the bar, but that was beautiful to see. And you can imagine how that could become a regular occurrence. Salah finding Isak with these kind of early crosses or, unique passes, Isak putting them away. You could see how that partnership can really build up over the course of the season. It's not there yet. And that was a rare glimpse of what is possible between these players. Salah had an absolute stinker. And Isak, while he started sharp, first 15 minutes, he looked sharp. He was making runs. He was giving his teammates something to think about, anticipating, looking hungry. He fell off very quickly though, didn't he? And actually he disappeared for large stretches of the game. He went missing. And so the early sharpness turned into a dull, blunt blade very quickly as the game wore on. Is that down to his lack of fitness, game sharpness, hopefully that will develop too. Wirtz, when he came on, had a beautiful bit of skill where the ball was passed in by Gakpo and he pirouetted. He turned full 360 like a ballerina, doing a pass midway through that turn to Salah, which Salah then missed the target. But that was gorgeous. That was a real piece of class and skill. And then again, that was pretty much all we saw from Wirtz. He then fell off as well really quickly. We have too many players that are just not on form. It's not just one or two. Half the squad, if not more. We're only a point off the league leaders Arsenal now that we're in second place, because as a collective they kept going, they kept believing, and there were just enough moments of quality in each game to get us the points. But I said many matches back, you can go check my videos, this will come back to bite us on the behind. You know, we will run out of that luck. And it has happened. The biggest problem for me, though, is that we never felt in control. It always felt like a high-risk kind of game. And even when it wasn't end-to-end, even when there were little dull moments in the game, we never looked like we knew what we were doing. What was the plan? What are our patterns of play? What triangles around the pitch are we making in order to bring the opposition players out of their comfort zone to move us forward into dangerous areas? Didn't look like we had any. And that's probably down to the lack of passing and movement, the lack of accurate passing and incisive movement, I should say. It's probably down to the lack of form of players like Salah, Isak, Wirtz, Gakpo. Our whole front line is just not firing at all. And it's probably also down to people like McAllister not being sharp and in form and not fit. You know, McAllister was a huge part of our midfield last season. And while Szoboszlai runs for two men on the pitch and Gravenberch generally looks pretty solid, if a whole cog in your midfield machine is off, that's going to affect things greatly. So why did we lose this match? Well, we lost it because the team cohesion is not there. Too many new players came in, disrupted the flow. We lost it because pre-season preparation was hit by the unfortunate death of a member of the Liverpool family, and that's going to have its repercussions. All right? If you ever lost a person, you know how long grieving takes and how it affects everything in your day-to-day life. We lost it because we're changing the strategy and formation from something we were very used to and that was very solid last season to something that is a lot more end-to-end and high risk so far this season. We lost it because Konaté's head is gone. He is not focused at all. And Van Dijk has lost a yard of pace. We lost it because Salah, our world beater, is off form. We lost it for many, many, many reasons. And so pointing the finger at any individual is kind of useless, really. We can talk about individual performances and how each player needs to try and improve. And we can also talk about the manager and some of his choices. But there's too many factors that have gone into our performances. What's the solution? You just got to fight through it, you know. On this channel, we try and provide balanced insight and analysis. And so we're not going to overreact now that we've lost 3 matches in a row and say it's all over, our season's done. No, 1-1 and lost 1 in the Champions League. We are second and only 1 point off the top of the Premier League. If you had said, here's your results this far into the season with a whole load of new players, the death of Diogo Jota and trying to play it in a different way, I think most Liverpool fans would have taken it, right? That makes sense. So, hey, it's not terrible news. We're not in a terrible situation. This is not the time to panic. This is a time to welcome the international break, recover, rest, build up some positive energies, work out some of the kinks in the strategy for Arne Slot and the coaching team, create lesson plans, as you will, so when the players arrive, they can get them into the big whiteboard room and show them everything that they're thinking about, and then get on the training pitch before the next match and try and put some of those into effect. This team will come good. There's too many quality players in that team, but it's to suddenly be a long run of losses. We should start winning again very, very, very quickly. And we should see players like Isak, Wirtz, Salah, Gakpo start to gel and have some free-flowing attacks. At least I dearly hope so, because we haven't seen that so far. But please, don't worry too much. This is football. You can't win every single game. I said before the Chelsea game in my preview, go back and watch that if you want. I said Chelsea are a top side. This will be a very, very difficult game that can go either way. Okay, so we lost this one. No biggie. We beat Arsenal, you know? Stick with it. You'll never walk alone. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.